Hi everyone, welcome. I am so glad that you could join me. This is my new project, my new passion project. My name is Heather and I am a longtime true crime junkie, and I've always wanted to start a channel or a podcast or something, and it just was never the right time. But it seems like the right time now, so I'll get into that a little bit later. I just want to let you know that, I've always been into true crime ever since I was a little kid. John Wayne Gacy was arrested when I was a child, and I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and I have some ties. A lot of people I knew lived nearby, or, I actually went to grade school in the same town that he lived in. So, I've always been interested in true crime and serial enders, and that's kind of my story. I've been, just absorbing as much as I can podcasts, high profile cases, documentaries, as much as I can regarding true crime for, as long as I can remember. I've been doing that. And never went into anything in the criminal justice system, but maybe I should have. Maybe, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about a lot of things with the criminal justice system, so we'll get there, all of this in due time. So anyways, I just wanted to let you know that I've been following true crime my whole life. To this day, I'm just truly fascinated by the human experience, the human condition, how people behave, what drives them, the human psyche. I'm just really, in my search of true crime, that's what drives me to find answers to things that, don't make sense. And that's really why I'm so excited to bring you this channel, Crime in Court, because I want to share with you what information that I find that sheds light on cases where pieces of the puzzle just don't quite fit. And when things don't add up, we have to start asking questions. We need to take a deeper look at our institutions and our organizations, even the ones that serve and protect us. We might have to ask questions about them. We might have to dig deeper and find out what's going on. Corruption, cover-ups, scandals happen, and, mistakes happen. And these things happen way more than we want to admit. A little mistake might happen, and then a cover-up happen, and then a snowball effect happens, and before you know it, it's a huge scandal. So things like that, we need to talk about, and we need to bring light and transparency and truth and justice to, because we need to talk about these things. It needs to be things that aren't above board need to be exposed, and I love that YouTube is a platform that can do that. So that's why I'm here, and I'm really excited to bring more awareness to these cases. With that all being said, I know that we can all be respectful of one another, even if we disagree. I know that we're all adults. We can have civilized, respectful conversations with one another, even if our opinions and our beliefs in these cases disagree. I'm going to be talking about polarizing cases and controversial topics. So in that regard, we will get people on both sides, and I just want people to have thoughtful conversations with one another with respect. So that is my only ask of you. Well, I take that back. My other ask is to, if you could please like this video, subscribe, and hit notifications so that you don't miss any episodes with this particular case that I'm going to explain in just a minute. I'm going to introduce. So please, and it helps the algorithms if you like, share, subscribe, and hit those notifications just so you don't miss a post, so you don't miss the video when these come out. So the case that I'm going to be talking about is a very complex and interesting case that's coming out of Canton, Massachusetts. And yeah, let's begin. All right, so the case that we're going to be talking about today is the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. And as today's episode is titled The Commonwealth, we're going to be going over the Commonwealth side, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts statement of case, which discusses which discusses their findings and their evidence throughout the investigation. And this is what they believe to have happened. So I'm going to play this real quick clip. I'm not even playing the whole, this is a 45-minute video. I'm not going to be playing that. I'm just going to be playing a quick, brief intro of this case from Vinnie Politan, from Closing Arguments, Court TV. I love Court TV. I love Vinnie. So I'm just going to play this brief little overview, and then we'll start reading the statement of case.
Karen Reed and her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, were bar hopping on a snowy night in Massachusetts. At the end of the night, they were invited to a house party at the home of a fellow officer in Canton, Massachusetts. When Karen and John arrived, Karen did not exit the car. John did. From that point forward, there are two very different versions of what happened. Prosecutors say Karen was mad at John and purposely struck him with her car and left him on the ground to die in the snow. But Karen and her defense team say John went to the party. Something terrible happened inside the house, and his body was placed outside, where he was found dead the next morning. Karen has been charged with murder, but claims she is the victim of a big cover-up by police. The battle inside the courtroom and outside the courthouse has been intense. Prosecutors insisting Karen Reed is a murderer, while she insists it was someone inside the house that night who is responsible for what happened to her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. Tonight, we bring in our own independent experts to examine the evidence in this case piece by piece as we try to figure out what happened to Officer John O'Keefe.
All right, so that was a good brief little intro, brief little clip. So, sorry, I'm just getting myself situated so I'm closer to the mic here. Might be moving the laptop a little bit. Okay, that's a little bit better. All right, so we are going to be talking about this case. Just real brief. Sorry, my eye itches under my glasses. We're going to be talking. I'll give you a brief overview again, just so you know what Vinny said. So Karen and John, as you can see on the screen, Karen and John were out bar hopping. They were drinking with some friends. John is a Boston police officer, and their friends are also, related to the police force, whether it's the state police or Boston police, whatever it is, local police. So Karen and John meet up at this waterfall bar and grill with these other police officers from Massachusetts, and they're all drinking, and eventually they go home for the night. When the bar ends, one of the guests that was there invited everybody over for an after party at their house, and this is another police officer, their house. So John knew these people, but I don't think he knew all of them very well. He knew some of the people in the group, and he knew someone named Jennifer McCabe, who we'll get into in much greater detail later. But so Jennifer is really, I think, the tie between the two groups, between Karen and John, and then this big group of people that went out, not a big group, but it was a group of people that went out to go out for drinks that night. So this night, the events that we're talking about happened January 29th, 2022, between January 28th and 29th. So they're out drinking. They leave the bar. Karen is driving John to this house. We'll call it the Albert house for right now. And That's the name of the last name of the people who own it. So, or did, not anymore. So Karen and John get to the house, and that's where things kind of get foggy. Karen says that she dropped John off and he went into the house, and she was waiting for him to text her back to say whether it was okay for them to attend the party or not, because she wasn't sure. So she stayed out in the car, waited for John to go in. And this is all according to Karen. Waited for John to go in and find out if they were even invited to this after party. They weren't even sure, because Karen doesn't really know these people very well. John only knows a few of them somewhat well. And she was just wanting to make sure. She never hears back from John, so she drives away, according to Karen. According to the people in the Albert house, some of the individuals said they saw the car, but they didn't see John. Nobody ever saw John enter the house, enter this home. Excuse me. So later, he's found. Karen goes home. She panics and wakes up and realizes John's not there. I don't even know if she went to sleep or not. I don't know if that's a fact. But I know that later on in the late morning hours, early morning hours of the 29th, she went out looking for John. She went out driving to look for John by herself, and then eventually she met up with some of the individuals, again, that Jennifer McCabe and another woman. They went out looking for John and eventually found John's body unresponsive on the lawn in front of this house that Karen dropped him off at. So that's kind of our story. Everyone at this party says, we never saw John. And Karen says she saw John go into the house, but then she never heard from him and she never saw him. So the state, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, is basically saying that Karen got into an argument with John and was so angry with him that she ran him over with her car, hit him with her car. So that's the statement of case. We're going to go through it detail by detail, but I just wanted to give you that brief overview, so now you're caught up. You know what's going on. So this, I just want to say that, I looked over this along with the probable cause affidavit, and there are some consistencies which I might point out as we go along. So I just want to say that. So the probable cause affidavit, that is something, in case you don't know, that is what is used by law enforcement to determine whether there is enough probable cause to arrest someone for a crime. So the law enforcement officer that wrote the probable cause affidavit, there's some glaring issues with him, as he has familial ties with this family that owns the house. So for him to be investigating this case was probably a huge conflict of interest. So he wrote the probable cause affidavit, this guy that I'm saying has a relationship with the people that own that home, where John was found deceased, or John was found unresponsive, later determined to be deceased. So that's kind of where we're at. So with that, I think that's sorry, it's kind of a long intro, but I wanted to make sure that you got all the bits and pieces kind of hammered out. So here we go. Now comes the Commonwealth in the above captioned matter and respectfully indicates that the following is a brief narration of the allegations in the above captioned matter, which is Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. This, by the way, that's what I missed my point. So the probable cause affidavit was written right after the events took place. So around the 29th or February 1st or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But this statement of case was actually written in June of 2022. So we've got a few months there where there was more investigating going on, behind the scenes, and maybe some information might have changed, or been verbalized differently. So differently than what was in the PCA, the probable cause affidavit. So let's keep going. The following is not intended to serve as bill of particulars, nor does it represent all the facts known to the Commonwealth. On January 29th, 2022, at approximately 6:04 a.m., the Canton Police Department received a call from a woman reporting a male party, subsequently identified as the victim, John O'Keefe, found in the snow at 34 Fairview Road. Fairview Road being a publicly maintained roadway within the town of Canton. At the time of the 911 call, there was an active blizzard occurring and heavy snow and the temperature in the teens. Okay, so John was laying out there without a coat in temperatures that were in the teens with snow and blizzard-like conditions. Officers CvrUp and Mullaney, both of the Canton Police Department, were dispatched to the scene along with Canton Fire and EMS. Officer CvrUp was the first officer to arrive on scene, where he observed 3 females waving at him from the front yard area of the residence. Looking at the residence of 34 Fairview Road from the street, the 3 females were at the left corner of the property in the area of the flagpole and fire hydrant. So they're off to the side. They're on the property in the front, but off to the side, to the left side a little bit. If you're looking at the street, it's off to the left side. Officer CvrUp observed the victim lying on the ground as 2 of the females were performing CPR on him. The 3 females on scene were identified as the defendant, Karen Reed, Jennifer McCabe, and Carrie Roberts. That's the other one who was in the car looking for John with her, with Karen Reed and Jennifer McCabe. So Officer CvrUp further observed the victim to be cold to the touch and not breathing. He returned to his cruiser to retrieve his AED device. However, at the time, Canton Fire and EMS arrived on scene and took over resuscitative efforts. Paramedics transported Mr. O'Keefe to the Good Samaritan Medical Center in Brockton, where he was subsequently determined to be deceased by Dr. Justin Rice hours later. Lieutenant Paul Gallagher, Detective Sergeant Michael Lenk, and Sergeant Sean Good, also of the Canton Police, arrived on scene moments after the 911 call had been received. Following the victim's transport from the scene, they began to search for any evidence around where Mr. O'Keefe had been discovered. These 3 officers located a broken cocktail-style glass and multiple patches of red that appeared to be blood in the vicinity of where the body had been located. So they find cocktail glass shards and patches of red, which appear to be blood in the vicinity. The Canton officers secured the glass and 6 blood samples from the snow as evidence. Remember that. That's important information. Later, we find out that they used red Solo cups that you bring to a kegger to collect those samples. But this is the Commonwealth's case, so we're gonna talk about what the Commonwealth is saying, how they're interpreting all of the evidence. So later that morning, the Massachusetts State Police Detective Unit of the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office was notified and responded to the scene as well. Trooper Michael Proctor and Sergeant Yuri Buchanan were among the troopers who responded to the scene and began interviewing witnesses. So now we have witnesses being interviewed. And just to back up, that Michael Proctor, Trooper Michael Proctor, is the one who wrote the probable cause affidavit and has the family ties with the people that own the home where John was found. All right. So these officers first spoke with Ms. McCabe. So Ms. McCabe indicated that she and some friends were at the Waterfall Bar and Grill the evening of January 28th. She arrived with her husband Matthew at approximately 9 p.m. At approximately 11 p.m., Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed arrived at the waterfall together. Ms. McCabe stated that Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed have been in a dating relationship for approximately 2 years and that Ms. Reed stayed at Mr. O'Keefe's house most nights. And that is confirmed. That is true. John, his, I believe it was his sister. And if you know, let me know if I'm wrong or right in the comments below. I believe it was his sister that passed away. And then his brother-in-law also passed away within like a year period or a short time. So John took in his niece and nephew as his own to raise. So he was raising his niece and nephew, and Karen was living there in the home helping to raise those kids. She helped in the child rearing and taking care of them. So they were definitely in a relationship like that. To say, Ms. McCabe observed that Ms. Reed walked into the bar holding a glass cup from C.F. McCarthy's with a clear liquid inside that she believed was a vodka soda drink. Ms. Reed had entered the waterfall with the glass inside her coat. Okay, so that's according to Ms. McCabe. Jennifer McCabe says that Karen walked into the bar with a drink in her glass hidden in her coat. Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed had been at C.F. McCarthy's, a bar across the street from the waterfall, prior to coming to the waterfall. This is very poorly written, sorry guys. Ms. McCabe observed Mr. O'Keefe to be wearing a baseball hat, jeans, and sneakers. She stated that the defendant and the victim appeared to be in a good mood and did not observe any arguing between the two throughout the course of the evening. And this is going to come up multiple times. Multiple people said that everyone was in a good mood, including John and Karen, and they were affectionate and loving with one another and in good moods. No fighting or arguing or anything like that. So she further described the atmosphere within the bar as friendly, with no arguments amongst any of the patrons. So this description of the group and the atmosphere within the bar and between the defendant and the victim was consistent with each of the witnesses present that the troopers interviewed throughout the course of the investigation. As the bar began to close down, everyone within their group was invited back to the 34 Fairview Road to discuss the residence of Ms. McCabe's sister, Nicole Albert, and her husband, Brian. So that's how we are connected here. John knows Jen McCabe. And through them, they believe they were invited to this after party to Nicole and Brian Albert's home. So Ms. McCabe observed Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed leaving the waterfall together. As Ms. McCabe was arriving at her vehicle, she received a text from Mr. O'Keefe asking where to. At 12:14 a.m., Ms. McCabe replied with the address of 34 Fairview Road. At 12:18 a.m., Mr. O'Keefe called Ms. McCabe to ask more specifically where the house was located. Okay, so he texts her, 12:14, where are we going? She gives him the address, but then he says where specific, or he wants to know where specifically it is on that road. So he calls her at 12:18, so 4 minutes later. While inside the residence, following her arrival there. So Ms. McCabe gets to the residence. Then she observes a black SUV, which is consistent with Ms. Reed's vehicle, a 2021 black Lexus SUV. So Ms. McCabe sees it arrive in front of the residence from her vantage point at the front door of the home. So Ms. McCabe then texts Mr. O'Keefe at 12:31 stating hello. And again at 12:40. So there's a time gap there. At 12:40 she says, pull up behind me, meaning referencing her vehicle's parking spot within the driveway to the home, located on the right side of the property if you're looking at it from the street. So Ms. McCabe then observed the black SUV move from its initial place where it had stopped on the street near the driveway and proceed to the left side of the property where Mr. O'Keefe's body was subsequently discovered later in the morning. Okay, so let me explain that. So Karen Reed pulls up to here's the house and here's the street, okay, so facing the street. So here's the house. Karen pulls up to the front of the house. She's right in front of the driveway. However, another car arrives around nearly the same time. So she ends up pulling up just a little bit further, which would be, if you're looking at the house, to the left. So she just drives up a little ways. She's not aligned with the driveway anymore. That's what that means. Okay. So at approximately... Oh, wait, did I skip something? At 12:45 a.m., Ms. McCabe then texts Mr. O'Keefe again. Hello. So at 12:31, she texts hello, meaning she thinks she sees his car, I'm assuming, or something, and then pull up behind me. And then again, she texts him at 12:45, which is... it's almost a half hour after they leave the bar. And this home is not very far from the bar. He should have been in the house by now for sure. So where was I? Yeah, so she texts him hello again at 12:45. And she's not getting any responses, by the way. At approximately 4:53 a.m., Ms. McCabe states that she received a phone call from Ms. Reed looking for Mr. O'Keefe. The defendant sounded distraught over the phone and drove over to Ms. McCabe's home. The defendant told Ms. McCabe that she last remembered seeing the victim at the Waterfall bar. Ms. McCabe then informed the defendant that she observed the defendant and the victim leave the bar together. So, Jen McCabe... Sorry, my dog is making noises and doing things on the floor. So Jen McCabe is stating that Karen, at this point, calls her up, says, I can't find John. I'm too distraught to drive. She meets her over at Karen. Why am I mixing these names? Karen meets Jen over at Jen's house. And then, this is all according to Jen, Karen tells her that she doesn't even remember seeing John after the Waterfall bar. Or, dropping her off at the house. Ms. McCabe also informed the defendant she had been with them in Ms. Reed's vehicle in front of the home in Fairview. The defendant also informed Ms. McCabe that not that she had been with them, that she had seen them, sorry. The defendant also informed Ms. McCabe that she and the victim had gotten into an argument the last time she had seen them. So before, remember, all the witnesses' statements are saying they weren't arguing. But now, Jen McCabe is saying that Karen just flat out told them we were in an argument while they're looking for John. So, I mean, she might have said, like, we were arguing over something stupid or whatever. I don't know. But that's according to Jen McCabe. So, shortly after the defendant arrived at Ms. McCabe's home, Ms. Carrie Roberts, remember that's the third individual that was with them when they found John. Ms. Carrie Roberts arrived there as well, as she had also received phone calls from Karen that early morning looking for the victim. So Ms. McCabe then drove Ms. Reed's vehicle from her house back to Mr. O'Keefe's house, as she was too hysterical, and Ms. Roberts followed along in her own vehicle. So Ms. McCabe drove Jen drove Karen's car. So Jen and Karen are in Karen's car together, and they drive back to John's house. And then Ms. Carrie Roberts is following behind them so that they can all hop back into Carrie's car and drive and go out looking. So while driving to Mr. O'Keefe's house, the defendant stated to Ms. McCabe, "Could I have hit him? Did I hit him?" Ms. McCabe stated that the defendant also told her about a cracked tail light on her vehicle. Once they arrived at the victim's house, The defendant had Ms. McCabe look at the cracked taillight, which Ms. McCabe described the passenger side right tail light as cracked and missing pieces. And I really want to point out that there's an inconsistency here because in the probable cause affidavit, it only said that Jen noticed it was cracked. She didn't say anything about missing pieces. She only said that it was cracked. So I find that to be very interesting. Hazel, can you lay down, please? You're making lots of noise. Okay, she needs to leave, or she needs to go out. So I'm going to pause it here and all right, so sorry about that. I had to pause just for a second because my dog was pacing around and you could hear her nails on the hardwood floor, and I think she needed to go out. So I'm back from that, and I'm ready to continue reading. There might be some overlap just because I want to get back to where we were. So while driving to Mr. O'Keefe's house, the defendant stated to Ms. McCabe, "Could I have hit him? Did I hit him?" Ms. McCabe stated that the defendant also told her about a cracked taillight on her vehicle. Once they arrived at the victim's home, the defendant had Ms. McCabe look at the cracked taillight, which Ms. McCabe described as the passenger side right rear taillight as cracked and missing pieces. And I want to point out here that in the PCA, it only said that Jen McCabe noticed that it was cracked. She didn't say anything about missing pieces. So it seems like perhaps maybe they just missed it, or, they're embellishing the story a little bit. I don't know. Ms. McCabe and the defendant then entered Ms. Roberts' vehicle to go looking for the victim. The defendant was seated within the back passenger side while Ms. Roberts drove, and Ms. McCabe was seated within the front passenger side. Ms. McCabe stated that they turned onto Fairview Road from Chapman Street, and at that time it was snowing heavily with a wind blowing, creating poor visibility. We know that the temperatures were very cold, it was snowing heavily, and so we already knew the temperature was... It was horrendous conditions for anyone to be laying out there with no coat or to be laying out there unconscious. So Ms. McCabe stated that just prior to 34 Fairview, there is a cluster of trees, and immediately the defendant stated that she saw the victim. This statement initially confused Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts as they were unable to see Mr. O'Keefe's body lying in the snow. So the two women that are with Karen Reed are saying, we didn't see John. There was no way to see John from where we were in the car. So Karen must have had some kind of knowledge that he was already there in that spot. That's what that's implying anyways. This statement initially, Ms. McCabe stated that the defendant screamed to open the door and ran directly over to the body near the cluster of trees and laid on top of him for warmth and began CPR. Ms. McCabe stated that the victim was lying on his back covered with approximately 6 inches of snow with his phone on the ground underneath him. So I just want to point out that if he was covered under 6 inches of snow, he likely would not have been seen. So if it was that much snow, which I don't believe it was, you wouldn't see him at all if there was 6 inches of snow covering him. Anyways, with his phone on the ground underneath him. So somehow his cell phone was lying on the ground under his body. The defendant yelled at Ms. McCabe twice to Google, "How long do you have to be left outside to die from hypothermia?" Again, this is according to Ms. McCabe's statements that the defendant yelled these things and asked her to Google how long to die in the cold. And remember that's an important factor later on. All right, so on January 29th, the troopers interviewed Mr. Matthew McCabe. Mr. McCabe indicated that he has known Mr. O'Keefe for approximately 8 years and has met Ms. Reed only a handful of times. He stated that he was at the Waterfall Bar on Saturday night and observed the victim and the defendant enter together. He observed the victim to be wearing a baseball hat with a curved visor. So that's different, saying that he was wearing a visor. The other people said he was just wearing a hat. Ms. Reed to be drinking a clear liquid drink, possibly vodka. So everybody is speculating that Karen Reed was drinking vodka or had some kind of knowledge that she was drinking a vodka. Mr. McCabe stated that he left the bar last from his group and was heading in to his in-laws' home at 34 Fairview Road. He entered his vehicle and his wife, Jennifer, was on the phone with the victim telling him to go to 34 Fairview. So remember, John called her. He first texted her, "Where are we going?" She sent the address, but then he called her. So this is the call. When he called her, asking for more specific directions on where it's located on the street. So while at the Fairview residence, he observed, Mr. McCabe, so now he's at the residence, he observed a large, dark SUV pull up in front of the house on the street. I just want to say it's strange that Jen and Matt were just standing in front of the door watching for people to arrive. I don't know. I don't usually do that. Do you guys? He had been looking out the opened front door through the glass storm door and described the SUV's positioning as initially parked in front of the house. So like I said, it's kind of suspicious that him and Jen both said that they saw this black SUV from the front of their front door of this Fairview Road house. And Matt had been looking through the open front door, through a glass storm door. So again, it's cold outside. It's 14 degrees, or, it's in the teens. And he's looking through the glass door. I don't know. Maybe he was waiting for them to arrive because he was waiting for other individuals to show up. I don't know. But it seems kind of suspicious to me to leave the door wide open when it's that cold. Like I said, I'm from Chicago, so I know you don't leave your front door open, even if you are waiting for people. All right, not in the cold, not in January weather. All right, so he had been looking out the open front door through the glass storm door and described the SUV's positioning as initially parked in the front of the street. Mr. McCabe looked out the window some minutes later and observed the same vehicle had moved toward the left of the property. So they're all confirming that, she pulled up in front of the property, like parallel to or perpendicular, to the driveway. And then she pulled up a little ways forward, which would have been left to the property if you're looking at the street. So multiple witnesses are stating that. Troopers also interviewed the homeowners of 34 Fairview Road, Brian and Nicole Albert. But what's interesting is that they're not interviewed until sometime later, but we'll get to that in another episode. All right, so both confirmed that they had been at the Waterfall Bar the previous evening with family and friends and had left around closing and returned to their home. Throughout the evening, they both indicated that the victim and defendant, neither of whom they knew particularly well, entered the bar and joined their group. They indicated that several people from the group had been invited back to the home following the bar, and several arrived staying for approximately 1 hour. So, an after party for only 1 hour. Neither were aware that the defendant and victim had planned on coming over, although they would have had no issue if they had been aware that John and Karen were coming over. They're saying there wouldn't have been a problem, but they just didn't know. So neither had heard nor saw anything outside of their home over the course of the morning until they were awoken by Ms. McCabe. So that is an interesting factor. So the whole time that Karen Jen and Carrie are outside trying to resuscitate John, and the EMS and fire show up, and then law enforcement. This whole time, this couple, um, Brian and Nicole, don't wake up. They are sleeping through the whole events, and then they don't hear about it until they are awoken by Ms. McCabe, which also begs the question, why didn't law enforcement ask to do, just a check of the house, or to look around, see if there was anything going on in the house, see if that everybody was okay, so it's just interesting that they weren't interviewed until much later, and they didn't even know, they claim that they didn't even know that anything was going on until they were awoken by Ms. McCabe. So troopers also interviewed Mr. Ryan Nagel. Mr. Nagel's sister had been at 34 Fairview the evening of January 28th visiting with the Albert's son for his birthday. Mr. Nagel stated that he had been contacted by his sister asking for a ride home. So she contacts her brother asking for a ride home. This is Ryan Nagel. His friend drove with Mr. Nagel in the front passenger seat and his girlfriend in the rear cab of his friend's Ford F-150 pickup truck to Fairview. Sorry, my dog needs to get cozy again. All right. She's kind of a diva. Sorry. So as the truck was driving down, okay, so Ryan Nagel is in his friend's Ford F-150 pickup truck, and they're driving to the Albert house, and his wife is in the back. And the friend is not mentioned. We don't know the friend's name. All right. So as the truck was driving down Cedar Crest Road, he observed a set of headlights of a mid-sized black SUV coming from the opposite direction on Cedar Crest. So him and Karen just pass each other. They're going the opposite directions. They just pass each other. And the truck, okay, so the SUV coming from the opposite direction, and the truck, and he was traveling in yielded, so his truck yielded to the SUV, making a right turn onto Fairview. And then they followed behind after executing its left turn. So Karen turned right onto Fairview. They turned left right behind her. And that's the reason why Karen pulled up from the driveway to the left side of the property, because of that fact, because there was someone right behind her. So she wanted to make room for that person and not, take up all the space of the driveway. Mr. Nagel stated that the truck stopped directly in front of the driveway to the home and remembered the black SUV stopping along the right-hand curb toward the left side of the property. So he's saying, yes, it pulled up, it's along the left side. So everyone's confirming that. He remained within the truck while his sister exited the home and asked them to come inside. So his sister, Ms. Nagel, comes out, asks Ryan to come inside. He declines the invitation, and his sister eventually decides she's just going to stay at the home and made other transportation. So she called to pick him up, but then he gets there and she's like, hey guys, why don't you just come inside for the party? Which seems a little, I don't know if I want to say suspicious, but it just seems to contradict. There's an inconsistency there, for sure. I mean, I get maybe you're just drunk and having a really good time and you're like, oh, I should go home. And then your brother gets there and you're like, oh, maybe we should just keep drinking. Maybe that's what she thought. And, the party could continue. I don't know. Well, we won't know unless we ask her. So, where was he? He declined the invitation, and his sister eventually decided to stay at the home and make other transportation arrangements. As his sister returned to the house, Mr. Nagel observed the black SUV pull up at approximately 1 to 1.5 car lengths to the far left edge of the home's property. Okay, so this is where she pulls up, where the flagpole was located along with some bushes. He stated that the SUV's driver did not appear to place the vehicle in park at any point that he observed it, as the rear brake lights were illuminated throughout his observations to include the third top center light. So he's saying he didn't believe that the car was in park. She didn't place it in park. She had her foot on the brake pedal. So Mr. Nagel reported hearing no noises coming from the interior of the SUV. Mr. Nagel indicated that as his friend pulled away from the side of the road where they were leaving, they drove past the black SUV and he observed the interior light was on within the vehicle and a Caucasian female operator seated inside the vehicle holding the steering wheel at 10 and 2, staring straight ahead of her. So no sign of John. John wasn't outside of the vehicle. John wasn't in the vehicle. He just saw Karen in the vehicle, sitting there staring straight ahead of her. Later that day, troopers Matthew Dunn, and David DeSico interviewed Ms. Carrie Roberts. So again, that's the third person that was on the scene. Ms. Roberts stated to them at approximately 5 a.m. she received a call from the defendant stating that John did not come home. It was snowing and she was worried. The defendant further stated to Ms. Roberts, "John's dead. Carrie, I wonder if he's dead. It's snowing. He got hit by a plow." According to Ms. Carrie Roberts, her statement there. Ms. Roberts got dressed and left in her vehicle, eventually meeting the defendant at Ms. McCabe's home, where she observed the defendant to be hysterical. Ms. Roberts stated that she believed the defendant was still intoxicated in the morning and had told her that she did not remember the last night. So according to Roberts, the defendant stated to her, "I was so drunk I don't even remember going to your sister's last night," referring to Ms. McCabe's sister's home, the homeowner of 34 Fairview Road. Ms. Roberts followed the defendant's black Lexus SUV back to Mr. O'Keefe's house. So, as we stated before, Jen McCabe drove. Sorry, my dog keeps tippy tapping on the floor. And we're back. Okay, sorry about that. She is not in the room anymore. All right, so Ms. Roberts followed the defendant's black SUV back to Mr. O'Keefe's house. So remember, Jen's driving it, Carrie's following behind in Carrie's car. They're going back to John's house just to drop the car off so that Carrie can drive the three of them around while they all look together. They went inside the home for a period of time for him to no avail. Ms. Roberts then drove her vehicle with Ms. McCabe in the front passenger seat and the defendant in the rear passenger side to 34 Fairview Road. She and Ms. McCabe were scanning the sides of the roadway along the drive looking for him, while the defendant periodically screamed and texted on her phone as they drove. Ms. Roberts described the weather as whiteout conditions as they were driving around. As they arrived in the area of 34 Fairview, Ms. Roberts stated that the defendant screamed, "There he is, I see him," from inside the vehicle and screamed to be let out. Even after initially exiting the vehicle, Ms. Roberts stated that she still could not see the victim in the conditions and further stated that his body was covered in snow. She stated that the victim's body was approximately 12 feet from the roadway. She observed him to have a swollen right eye with a laceration above it and blood around his nose and mouth. Ms. Roberts stated that they immediately began CPR and Ms. McCabe called 911. Ms. Roberts stated that she observed the victim to be lying on his back with his arms by his side. She noticed that his right eye was swollen shut and that there was blood coming from his nose and mouth. When the paramedics arrived and lifted the victim's body onto the stretcher, Ms. Roberts observed the grass underneath the victim's back not covered in snow as the remainder of the area was. So basically pointing out that this body was there before it even started snowing. The defendant repeatedly asked Ms. Roberts, Ms. McCabe, and the officers and paramedics on the scene, "Is he dead?" repeating the phraseology numerous times to each of them. The defendant further grabbed Ms. Roberts by the arm at one point and asked her if they were really working on John or if he was already dead. In addition, Trooper Buchanan interviewed Nicholas and Karina, and I don't even know how to pronounce that, so I'm just going to say Mr. and Ms. K. Both were present with the group at the Waterfall bar. Okay, so these people were present at the bar on the 28th with everyone there. They arrived at approximately 9 and 9:30 respectively, as they came in separate cars following their daughter's high school basketball game. They had known the victim for approximately 5 to 6 years and had met Karen a handful of times. Again, so everyone's saying, we knew John for a few years, but we didn't really know Karen. So they stated that the victim and the defendant arrived at the Waterfall together at 11 p.m., arriving from C.F. McCarthy's across the street. Mrs. K spoke for a period with the defendant and observed her to be drinking vodka soda cocktails while at the bar. She also recalled the defendant pushing quite a bit for a member of the group, Chris Albert. So this is in relation to Brian and Nicole Albert. He's a family member. He owns a local pizza shop across the street. So they're saying Mrs. K's statement to police is that Karen was pushing for quite a bit for Chris to go across the street and make some pizzas for everybody. That's according to Mrs. K. When it was time to leave, Mrs. K indicated that she walked outside with Ms. McCabe and observed the victim and defendant to walk out together and proceed to the left of the driveway and up Washington Street, where their vehicles were parked along the curb, facing back up towards Waterfall. So she watched them walk to their cars. Mrs. K indicated that her vehicle was also parked alongside Washington Street, but further down and facing the opposite direction. From there, she observed the defendant walking towards the driver's side door of her black SUV. She further indicated that during the course of her conversation that evening with the defendant complained about the victim's mother and the victim of private time that the couple had for vacations because of the children, their activities and responsibilities. So, according to Mrs. K, Karen was complaining a little bit about the fact that John's mother maybe didn't give them enough private time, or maybe intruded a little bit on in their lives. So she was just, according to Mrs. K, Karen complained about that briefly. The defendant complained. Doesn't say briefly. I added that, sorry. She also described her as fine and did not believe that the defendant to be overly intoxicated. So Mrs. K doesn't think that Karen Reed was overly drunk. She wasn't slurring. She wasn't, acting out when you drink. She wasn't acting intoxicated. So on January 30th, Troopers Buchanan and Proctor, so this is the day after he's found, they interviewed the Canton firefighter Katie McLaughlin, I think. I don't know. This is Massachusetts, and I don't have that accent, so sorry if I butcher any of these names or streets or whatever. I apologize. I'm sure you'll let me know how I'm getting it wrong in the comments and correct me very nicely and politely. All right, so Katie McLaughlin. She had been assigned to Station 1 on the 29th and indicated that at approximately 6 a.m., Canton Fire and EMS had been dispatched to 34 Fairview Road for a male party in the snow and unresponsive. Upon arrival, Ms. McLaughlin observed the victim to have trauma to his face and eye area and vomit in his mouth. So he still had vomit in his mouth. She observed the victim to be dressed in jeans, socks, and one black Nike sneaker, so he's missing a shoe. The victim's shirts were cut and his chest exposed for chest compressions. Ms. McLaughlin had exited the ambulance to speak with the defendant as to the victim's identity and medical history. The defendant where Karen provided the victim's name and date of birth. Ms. McLaughlin asked the defendant if she knew where the victim had suffered the trauma to his face and eye, and the defendant turned to her friend and stated repeatedly, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Okay, so that's according to Katie McLaughlin, the EMS firefighter. Following their initial witness interviews on January 29th, Troopers Buchanan and Proctor then proceeded to the Good Samaritan to view the victim. They observed 6 bloodied lacerations varying in length on the right arm. The cuts extended from his forearm to his bicep. These cuts are really important, and I want to stop right there to point out, if Karen backed up into him, the cuts on his arm are not consistent with being hit by a car. They are more like scratches or bite marks from a dog, which will come up later on. I don't want to give too much away. We're going bit by bit. Remember, we're just gonna chip away little by little until we find the truth. All right. The troopers observed a cut to the right eyelid. Victim's clothing. Both of the victim's eyes were swollen shut and black and blue. The victim's clothing consisting of blue jeans, an orange t-shirt, long sleeve gray shirt. So he only had a long sleeved gray shirt on and another shirt underneath, and boxer shorts, were soaking wet and saturated with blood and vomit. So all of his clothes were soaking wet and saturated with blood and vomit. They were probably wet from the snow and the blood and vomit. I mean, we know how that got there. All right. Well, we don't know how that got there, but we can presume it's from him, but especially since it was in his mouth as well. So the victim was also observed to have one black Nike sneaker with a white Nike logo on the side. On January 31st, Dr. Irene Scorti-Bello from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiners conducted the autopsy of Mr. O'Keefe. The doctor advised the troopers that she observed several abrasions to the victim's right forearm. So she's calling them abrasions, several abrasions. 2 swollen black eyes, a small cut above... Oh, crap. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. I thought I had my desktop audio down. So she observed several abrasions to the victim's right forearm, 2 swollen black eyes, a small cut above the right eye, a cut to the left side of his nose, an approximately 2-inch laceration to the back right of his head, a multiple skull fractures. So something fractured his skull multiple ways that resulted in bleeding of the brain. Dr. Scorti-Bello further advised the troopers that the victim's pancreas was a dark red color indicating hypothermia. So hypothermia was a contributing factor to his death. So the fact that he was laying out there for so long most likely contributed to his death. He may have, survived if he had been given medical treatment right away. We don't know. So Dr. Scorti-Bello opined from her examination that the significant blunt force trauma injuries occurred prior to Mr. O'Keefe becoming hypothermic, as evidenced by hemorrhaging in his pancreas and stomach. Mr. O'Keefe had arrived at the Good Samaritan Medical Center with a body temperature reading in the low 80s. So hypothermia definitely played a role. He was very cold. The doctor, and I believe when Karen gets there, she even might have even mentioned how cold he was and when she touched him. So the doctor opined that the extensive injuries to his head likely rendered Mr. O'Keefe incapacitated. At approximately 4:30 p.m. on January 29th, troopers Buchanan and Proctor arrived at the residence in Dighton, Massachusetts. This is the defendant's parents' home. Upon their arrival, they observed a large black SUV with whatever registration number registered to the defendant parked outside the garage door in the driveway to the home. The troopers observed that the rear right passenger side tail light to be shattered and a large red piece of plastic to be missing from the tail light. A large red plastic piece missing from the tail light, and it's shattered. So before we went from cracked and then cracked to cracked and missing pieces, and now it's shattered and a large red piece of plastic missing. So it keeps changing as we go. The troopers were invited into the home and observed the defendant seated on the living room couch. The defendant agreed to speak with the troopers. The defendant indicated to the troopers that she had met the victim at C.F. McCarthy's bar in Canton at approximately 9 p.m. the evening prior. The victim had been there with friends prior to the arrival. So John was there. She got there a little later. She stated that the victim was drinking beers and she was drinking vodka sodas. So she confirmed she was drinking vodka sodas. She described the glassware she was drinking out of as a vase-style glass, whatever that is. The defendant stated that she and the victim left C.F. McCarthy's and went to the waterfall, but denied that she had taken any drink from one bar to the next. So she doesn't recall or flat out denies that she took a drink from one bar to the other bar. She stated that they were at the waterfall for approximately an hour, and during that time there were no arguments amongst anyone present there. When she and the victim were leaving the waterfall, she stated that they were invited to the house on Fairview Road. The defendant stated that she had dropped the victim at the house on Fairview and went home since she was having stomach issues at the previous bar. So if she's having stomach issues at the previous bar and doesn't necessarily want to continue on with the night, why would she be insistent then that Chris Albert go across the street and make pizzas? Some inconsistencies there. The defendant stated that she dropped him off, then made a 3-point turn into the street and left. She stated that she did not see the victim enter the residence. So maybe she was on her phone, maybe because she had pulled up further, she didn't see him, she couldn't see into the door. I don't know. She just says maybe she wasn't paying attention. She didn't see him actually go into the front door. The defendant indicated that she first observed the broken taillight in the morning and did not know how she had broken it in the previous evening. The victim was uninjured when she dropped him off at the house. However, when she discovered him the next morning, she observed him lying face up, snow on his legs, his eyes swollen, and blood coming from his nose and mouth. She stated that she began providing him mouth-to-mouth. The defendant further stated that she had attempted to contact the victim throughout the night, calling and texting him numerous times with no response, and call logs do corroborate that. She stated that they had a verbal agreement the morning over that same morning over what the defendant fed the victim's niece for breakfast. So she admits they had an argument, but it was a small argument over what she fed the kids. So it doesn't seem like it was a very large argument. But anyways, the black SUV was seized from the driveway of the defendant's parents' home in Dighton on January 29th as well. So the vehicle was then transported via tow to the Canton Police Department. On February 1st, members of the Massachusetts State Police Crime Scene Services Section, a crime lab chemist, and trooper Joseph Paul of the Massachusetts State Police Collision Analysis and Reconstruction Section, or CARS, responded to the department. So all of these units came and they observed fragments of broken glass on the rear bumper of the vehicle. The rear right passenger side tail light was shattered and pieces were observed missing from the red and clear areas. So now we're missing red and clear pieces, according to all of these experts now on February 1st, days later. On the right side of the rear tailgate, a deep scratch and minor dent were observed. On the right side of the rear bumper, above a small red light, 2 scratches were observed and one area where the paint was chipped off. Troopers from the cars unit performed a rapid acceleration forward and reverse tests with the vehicle and noted no deficiencies with the vehicle's braking system or other operations. The troopers placed a training figure resembling a human approximately 6 feet in height behind the Lexus. The vehicle was operated by the cars trooper and documented with video from crime scene. So they recreated tests. They tested the vehicle, making sure that all of the functions were functioning properly. So the braking system was working right. The notification lights and alert system wasn't working. So that's what they were testing. The vehicle was placed in reverse and started to travel towards the training figure. The rear view camera within the vehicle was operating properly, displayed on a screen in the center of the dashboard, and provided a 360-degree visual. So the camera provided a view of everything, visual of 360 degrees. As the Lexus traveled closer to the figure, both auditory and visual cues within the vehicle sounded off, indicating an obstruction to the rear. So everything was working properly according to these tests. In addition, forensic scientist Maureen Hartnett responded to the Canton Police Department that date as well and observed and took samples from the Lexus. She noted damage to the rear of the vehicle on the passenger side, including a dent with chipped paint, a broken taillight, and scratches on the bumper. So everyone's confirming all of these scratches, breaks, dents. An apparent hair was noticed on the rear passenger side quarter panel. Apparent glass was also noted on the rear bumper. So hair and glass on the bumper. Even though Karen drove it home and around and was looking for John, and then drove it to Jen's, and it was driven back to John's, and then it was driven to Karen's parents' house in another town, but this hair and this piece of apparent glass was on the rear bumper. Okay. Also, on January 29th, the Massachusetts State Police Special Agency Emergency Response Team, or CERT, was activated to assist in searching for possible evidence outside of the 34 Fairview Road. Members from the CERT team located a black Nike sneaker with a white Nike logo along the side of what? Along the side of what? They missed this Nike sneaker, and they missed it the first time. It's a black shoe in white snow. I don't know how you miss it. And then both in the PCA and in here, all it says is the Nike sneaker with a white logo was found along the side, matching the one that the victim had. So the other shoe that John was wearing was found, but it wasn't on him. It was somewhere on the side. On the side of what? They never explain it. It is only stated as on the side. So where exactly is this on the side? I don't know. They're not specific enough. And which makes me think that makes me wonder where that Nike shoe actually came from, because no one is saying specifically where it was, just that it was along the side. Suspicious wording. In the same area where the body had been recovered, 2 red plastic, see, this explains in the area where the body had been recovered. Like, you explain it was in the area of this, or we found it specifically by the bushes and the fire hydrant or something. PCAs and these statements of cause, you're supposed to be specific, but to say something was just found on the along the side, that term stuck out to me because it was used twice. Anyways, so in the same area where the body had been discovered, 2 red plastic pieces of a taillight were located, consistent to the pieces missing from the defendant's black SUV. One piece of clear plastic taillight was located in the same area as well, also consistent with the broken taillight. So clear plastic and red pieces were found. But this was, it was found by the emergency response team. So CERT. So it wasn't found by the initial law enforcement that came there. It was found later by this search team. They couldn't find, the original law enforcement did not find these things. In the same area where the body, we just read that, sorry. On January 1st, investigators observed video from the Ring cameras affixed to One Meadows Avenue, the residence of Mr. O'Keefe. The video was observed by utilizing the Ring application on the victim's cell phone. The data in the application showed that 2 cameras were connected on the victim's account under his email. The 2 cameras cover the front door and a driveway to the home. From 6 p.m. on January 28th through 6 a.m. on January 29th, the Ring application showed approximately 15 events between the 2 cameras at the residence. Investigators observed on the Ring video from the driveway area the defendant's SUV leaving the right garage door and traveling out of the garage onto Meadows Avenue and turning left onto Pleasant Street at approximately 5:08. The investigators were not able to locate any Ring video of the same SUV arriving at the home prior to that. The victim's Chevrolet Traverse SUV was parked in the far right corner of the driveway. As there's video of this has been released, and we'll watch it at a later time, but I didn't have it prepped and ready to go, so we'll watch it in another episode because we'll talk more about the taillight specifically then. So the victim's Chevrolet was parked at the far right corner of the driveway as the defendant's SUV exited in reverse from the garage, coming close to the victim's SUV. As the defendant's vehicle exits the driveway, the troopers observed her right passenger side taillight to be broken. On February 3rd, Trooper Evan Brandt from Crime Scene Services arrived with Trooper Proctor at the home and documented all sides of the Traverse and the garage doors. No damage was observed anywhere on either of the vehicles or the doors. I need to take a sip of water. Hold on one second. And a breath. Take a breather. There's a lot of words here. All right, we don't have that. I mean, it's a long document, so we're almost done. We're on 14 of 20. We probably will get through the last couple pages quickly. Some of it is repetitive, unfortunately, but it is there to help corroborate and prove that, all of the witnesses are saying the same thing about Karen, or all of the witnesses are corroborating something, or if they're not, then what's different. So on February 1st, Troopers Buchanan and Keefe, is that an error there? And Keefe, that must be an error. Troopers Buchanan and, who was the other trooper that we had? I can't remember who the other one was that they listed. But that's weird. It's probably Proctor. Buchanan and Proctor, possibly, but Keefe is probably an error. Anyways, we know Buchanan, at least, traveled to C.F. McCarthy's bar and spoke with the manager of the bar. They reviewed and secured video from inside the establishment from January 28 and receipts. From the interior surveillance video, the troopers observed Miss O'Keefe walk into the establishment wearing jeans, a black Nike sneakers, a gray and dark gray long sleeve shirt, and a dark baseball hat with an American flag on the front. So everyone saw John wearing the same thing, basically, at approximately 7:37, along with his friend Michael Camerano. Approximately an hour later, at 8:51 p.m., the defendant enters the bar wearing a black jacket. Oh, so he was at C.F. McCarthy's at 7:34. So at 8:51, the defendant enters the bar wearing a black jacket, black boots. Yes, we're at C.F. McCarthy's. Sorry. I don't know. I was getting confused. I apologize. So we're at C.F. McCarthy's, and John's there already with a friend. And at 8:45, Karen walks in with a black jacket, black boots, black pants, a handbag or small purse, and a white shirt underneath her jacket. So she looks classy. 7 minutes later, at approximately 8:58, the bartender hands the defendant a tall cylinder glass drink containing a clear liquid with a lime in it. So that could be her vodka sodas with a lime. At approximately 9:15, the victim hands the defendant a cylinder glass with a clear liquid with a lime in it. So she gets another drink about 15 minutes later. At the following times, the trooper observed in the video the defendant receiving a shot glass with a clear liquid in it, which she subsequently pours into her cylinder glass. At 9:20, 9:30, 10:20, 10:22, and 10:29 p.m. At approximately 9:57 p.m., the bartender is observed handing the defendant a tall cylinder glass with a clear liquid in it and a shot glass with a clear liquid in it. For a total of 7 drinks the defendant receives and consumes during her time at the bar. So this is according to Trooper Buchanan, who viewed the video footage, surveillance footage from C.F. McCarthy's. At approximately 10:40, the victim and the defendant are observed leaving the bar with the defendant holding her last drink in her right hand as they exit. Also on February 1st, troopers traveled to the Waterfall Bar and reviewed and secured both interior and exterior surveillance. I just had a thought, but I don't want to say it yet. Okay. Also on February 1st, troopers traveled to the Waterfall Bar and reviewed and secured both interior and exterior surveillance camera footage, as well as receipts from the establishment as well. So now we're at the Waterfall. From the interior cameras, the troopers observed the victim and the defendant enter the bar at approximately 10:54. So about 15 minutes later, 40 minutes later, the defendant was observed grabbing the drink she walked into the waterfall with in her right hand and walking to the left side of the table or screen. The defendant was observed on the video consuming 2 additional drinks, 1 shot and 1 mixed drink, during her time at the bar, for a total of 9 drinks between the 2 establishments. At approximately 12:10, the defendant walks out with 2 females, leaving through the front door. Moments later, the victim, standing alone at the table, takes a sip from a short cocktail glass and walks out the front door holding the glass in his right hand. Ugh. Okay, so there's a lot that I just said there. So the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is stating that they went and got the surveillance footage from C.F. McCarthy's, and she had about 7 drinks there within the short time frame that she was there, including shots that she was pouring into her vodka soda. And then they're saying that she left the C.F. McCarthy's with a drink in hand, and then arrives at the Waterfall Bar, and you can see her go to the left side of the table / screen, where she is grabbing the drink that she walked into the waterfall with. So she must be, taking it out of her coat or whatever, if they said she snuck it in her coat. But I just had a thought, because So the PCA in this say that she leaves with two females. She walks out of the bar with two females. Who are those two females? They're two women that are at this outing at the waterfall bar. So who are those women? And I don't know. It just doesn't say. And then moments later, the victim, standing alone, takes a sip from his drink and walks out the front door with his glass in his hand. So John's got his glass now, leaving the waterfall bar. From the exterior camera, the troopers observed the victim walk out at approximately 12:11, carrying a short cocktail glass in his right hand. They meet up with the defendant, and then the two walk together toward Washington Street. So they meet up and start walking towards their car together. The troopers also observed from this exterior camera that it appeared to have just begun snowing with a light coating on the ground and cars within the parking lot. So it's a light dusting of snow just starting as they're leaving the bar. On February 2nd, troopers Dunn and Moore were canvassing for video footage in relation to the investigation. They proceeded to the Edward J. Lynch Jr. house at, no idea how to say that. I'm not going to say that. Piquitside Farm? Okay, I don't know. Correct me in the comments, please. On Pleasant Street in Canton. They were able to retrieve video footage from the town's IT director, who confirmed that the date and timestamps on the video were correct. The troopers also viewed and recovered video from the Canton Town Library external cameras, and on February 3rd from the Temple Bath Abraham, I don't know if that's a synagogue or what that is, so place of worship. Both the library and the temple's cameras overlook Washington Street in Canton. The distance between the two buildings is approximately 1 mile. From the library video, at approximately 12:15, the troopers observed a large black SUV consistent with the defendant's Lexus traveling on Washington Street and continued toward the temple 4 minutes after the victim and the defendant exited the waterfall. At approximately 12:17, from the temple video, the troopers observed the black SUV traveling by the building in the direction of the residence where John was found. So this is important because they're trying to, the Commonwealth is trying to establish whether her taillight was broken before or after or when it happened. So from the library video, at approximately 5:11 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling down Sherman Street, take a left onto Washington, and travel in the direction of the waterfall. At approximately 5:15 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling away from the area of the waterfall on Washington Street, crossing over Sherman, and continuing on Washington toward the temple. From the temple video, at approximately 5:18 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling by the front of the building towards the intersection. In addition, the troopers received via a search warrant the defendant's Verizon cell phone records. Lieutenant Brian Tully of the Massachusetts State Police examined said records and was able to plot the defendant's movements while the phone was in use for various periods of time. So we need to, this to me, Brian Tully is a lieutenant, but is he a cell phone expert? Was a cell phone expert used to put her in that location? I don't know. That screams to me a little off. That the Lieutenant Brian Tully examined her Verizon records and was able to plot the defendant's movements. He says the phone's movements coincided with the directions of travel of the black SUV observed on the videos from the library and the temple during both time frames. All right. So this is just, trying to establish her location, where she was all the time, trying to establish that she was there. here on February 22nd, both the 10-year-old nephew, CF, and the 14-year-old niece, KF, of the victim were interviewed at the Norfolk Advocates for Children Center in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Okay, so now they're interviewing the children. The children, these are the nephew and the niece of John O'Keefe, who was being raised by John and Karen simultaneously. The children indicated that they had lived with their uncle, the victim, for approximately 8 years following the passing of both of their parents. Both children, so the 10-year-old it was only 2 when the parents passed. That's so sad. All right, so so he took a baby. He took a 2-year-old in. Both children indicated that the victim and the defendant had started dating approximately 2 years ago, after having dated some time before in the past. So they've had a relationship before, and now they got back together. They both indicated that the defendant would stay over their house on Meadows Avenue several nights a week. PF, who's PF? We've got CF and PF. Who the heck is PF? Anyone? Why? I don't know. So, okay. So PF is another individual that they're hiding, or they got the initials wrong. I don't know. So PF stated that the defendant and victim argued a decent amount of time. Sorry, my dog's getting up and laying some. Go lay down, Dex. Lay down. Come here. You come up here? No. Okay. Go lay down. All right. He's not laying down. He wants his lunch. And I want to finish this. I'm going to cut this part out, hopefully. Dex, go lay down, please. Go lay down. Good boy. Good boy. Okay, he's on his bed now. All right, so starting back where we were. PF stated that the defendant and victim argued a decent amount of times. PF recalled a recent argument over groceries and the victim expressing needing a break from the defendant. After the particular argument, the victim wanted the defendant to leave their house. However, she refused. PF indicated that he had left the home on January 28th at approximately 8 p.m. for a sleepover at a friend's house. So PF is the child, the little boy. So not CF, but PF. I don't know how they made that mistake, but okay. So PF indicated that he had left the home on January 28th at approximately 8 p.m. for a sleepover at a friend's house and was not present at the home overnight. PF indicated that neither he nor his sister had access to the Ring system, but believed that the defendant did from the family computer within their home. So they think that Karen had access. All right, so back to KF. KF is the 14-year-old female niece. So KF indicated during her interview that the defendant and the victim had argued a lot towards the end, approximately 2 to 3 times a week. She further stated that approximately a week prior to January 29th, she was sitting on the stairway inside the house while the victim and defendant were arguing. KF stated that she heard the victim tell the defendant that their relationship had run its course and that it isn't healthy. So the victim, John, told Karen, according to the 14-year-old, that the relationship had run its course and they don't have a healthy relationship. She stated that the defendant did not want the relationship to end and refused to leave their house. KF stated that she had gone to bed at approximately 11 p.m. on January 28th after her friend had left and was awoken by the defendant at approximately 4:30. So KF is hanging out with another friend. Her friend leaves. She goes to bed at 11 p.m. and then is woken up at approximately 4:30 a.m. with Karen screaming and acting frantic. The defendant ran into the victim's bedroom to retrieve KF's cell phone, and KF then began texting and calling the victim with no response. The defendant, so from Karen tried to reach John, and John wasn't answering, and now Karen woke up the niece, and the niece is trying to reach John, and John's still not answering. So the defendant had then asked KF to call Ms. McCabe. So Karen asks the niece to call Jen McCabe and put the defendant on the phone with her. So she needs to get a hold of Jen. And she doesn't know how because she doesn't know these people. So after speaking with Ms. McCabe, the defendant left the house and told KF to call Mr. Camerano. So that's the guy that was with John at the CF McCarthy bar before they went to the waterfall. And it doesn't say that he went to the waterfall, so I don't believe that he went with, but I'm not sure. There's no confirmation one way or the other. So anyways, Karen asks KF to call him, Mr. Camerano, to come and pick her up. KF indicated during her interview that the defendant changed her story several times while speaking to Ms. McCabe on the phone, with initially the defendant stating that she and the victim got into an argument and she dropped him off. On January 29th, the troopers also recovered Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone and were subsequently able to forensically extract the data from said phone. Their forensic extraction of the call logs, voicemails, and text messages between the victim and the defendant, including the date of January 28th and 29th, detailed strains within their relationship. So they get the phone data from John, and it appears that everything was not all rosy with the victim and Karen, even though... Well, not even though, I mean, Karen admitted that they had arguments. They had, she admitted that they were arguing that morning. So we do know that is true. To the extent of it, we don't know other than what we're hearing from the niece and nephew who lived there. So the niece, detailed text messages, voicemails, call logs, all detailed that there was a strain within their relationship, and the victim desired to end the relationship, and the defendant, her description of their relationship with them and the two children together as toxic. So Karen herself apparently described the relationship with John as toxic, or John is describing it as toxic. No, it's the defendant's description. Sorry. Yeah, I was right the first time. The defendant, Karen even describes the relationship as toxic. John wanted to end it. So that's what the voicemails and everything were saying. All right. So the troopers recovered several voicemails from the victim's phone from the defendant following the time period they were in front of the residence. So Karen was calling John several times while she's seated in front of the residence in her black SUV. Apparently, one of the voicemails that she left, she screamed to the victim that she hated him. Which, even if that is true, that does not mean she's a murderer. Let's just be clear on that. I've stated to people that I've hated them. People have stated it. People say it all the time to people. I hate you because you're angry at them. It doesn't mean you're going to kill them. So it is indicative that she might have been in an irrational state of mind if she was angry at him and hated him. But there is some context later that comes with that comment. So we'll let her explain that later or, talk about that later. Anyways, lastly, so we're finally getting to the end, and my dog's happy because we can go, I can give them some food. Anyways, so lastly, on January 29th, the defendant was transported from the scene. Dexter, lay down. He heard food. All right, so lastly, on January 29th, the defendant was transported from the scene to the Good Samaritan Medical Center. While there, blood was drawn pursuant to her medical diagnosis and treatment at the facility. The ethanol results from said records indicate that at 9:08 a.m. on the 29th, so this is several hours after she had dropped John off, 9 hours, because she dropped him off somewhere around midnight. So 9 hours later, this reading, we're being told her alcohol level on the 29th, her blood had a reading of 93 milligrams, whatever, I don't know how you say that. So Nicholas Roberts, a forensic toxicologist from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory, performed both a serum conversion and retrograde extra, whatever that is. Dex, stop. All right, so this Nicholas Roberts, a forensic toxicologist from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory, performed both a serum conversion and retrograde. He did these tests that I know nothing about. And of said results, he opined that Ms. Reed's blood alcohol at the time of the 29th was 0.07 to 0.08%. So, again, we're talking 9 hours later, but she had a blood alcohol of 0.0 to 0.8%. From his retrograde analysis, he opined that her blood alcohol around the time period of 12:45, which was when she dropped him off, would have been 13 to 29%. So that is the Commonwealth's experts stating that Karen would have been quite intoxicated at the time. And that is written by filed, this respectfully filed for the Commonwealth by Michael Morrissey, District Attorney. Adam C. Lally, Assistant District Attorney, is the one I believe who filed it. That looks like Lally. So that, my friends, is the the statement of case for the Commonwealth, and that is their side. That is their side, and they're sticking to it. That's their story. They're stating that Karen, out of a fit of rage and being very intoxicated, drove or backed up into John, ending his life. So that is their statement, and we will get into in episode 2, which I hope to drop, these two consecutively, 1 and 2, so you can get both parts at the same time. This is going, in the second episode, we're going to talk about the defendant's case and what she's arguing and how she is going to contest a lot of the things in these statements, and we're going to go from there. There's so many parts and pieces. I have so many episodes planned because you can't do it in one. Look, I've already gone, I don't even know, well over an hour and a half just to get through this statement of case, which is basically like the probable cause, but a little more written more like a story. So I wanted to read it that way, so it was given to you in a narrative like that, and then you have the pieces of the Commonwealth. And in our next episode, we will go into the defense's arguments and read their statement in regards to this. So please, again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what words I mispronounced mispronounced, definitely, but nicely, please. Be nice in the comments with your feedback. I hope this is my, going for my first big case here, and this case is so complex and important, and this case could happen to any one of us, and there's more supposed criminals behind this that we'll get into. I do want to mention Turtle Boy, if you haven't heard of him. He is currently serving time in prison at this moment, which his arrest really impassioned me and empowered me to start this channel, because what the Commonwealth, in my opinion, is doing to him is just irreprehensible. It's disgusting. It's vile. They are obstructing his First Amendment rights, his freedoms, the ability to talk about this case and to talk to the witnesses or about the witnesses in this case has been completely stripped of him, because the witnesses don't like the fact that he's brought out certain information and he's dug deep into this case, and the witnesses don't like it. So I just wanted to do that little shout out to Turtle Boy. Turtle Boy, if you're watching, if you hear this at all, thank you for all you've done for this case, for the movement, for Free Karen Read, for the Canton 9, and the people there need to rally as they did this last hearing with Karen, and come together for you as well, because what they're doing to you is just disgusting. So anyways, with that, we will totally get into all of that with Turtle Boy, but I just wanted to say that as an homage to Turtle Boy, because he is what prompted me to start this channel, really. So everybody take care, and I hope to see you at the next episode. Have a great one. Bye.